obscure world of parking. We use it every day, but have we really capitalized on the intricacies of our industry? In this podcast, the Parking Network will go behind the scenes and talk to industry professionals about all things parking, from the horizon of evolving technology and even stories of the old days. We hope to encourage and inspire operators and property managers alike to look at parking through a new lens. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Our Parking Industry Podcast. I am Krista Olien, and I'm joined by Leigh Thomas from TPN. We also have a special guest with us today, Trent Prior. He is the Manager of Business Services in the town of Victoria Park in Australia, Western Australia. So welcome, Trent. Can you tell us a little bit about your story, how you made it into parking of all things?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for having me on. So my background comes from a long history of working in gyms and recreation centres, and ultimately fell into the place of parking and ranges through the opportunity at the town of Victoria Park. And ultimately, not knowing too much about the parking industry, went on a really long journey of discovery and asking people around the industry's best practice. And now, 3 years on, we've been able to really excel what parking technologies look like in the town of Victoria Park. And we're just driving so many great efficiencies over the time and innovations. So we're really proud of what we've been able to achieve in such a short period of time.
Absolutely. Parking is so interesting. It's like we always talk about it, that people fall into it and then they just kind of stay there after you've taken the time to learn everything. And there's really never an end to that learning because of those innovations and things that you were referring to. It's constantly changing. So for listeners who have never been to Western Australia, or hosts that have never been to Western Australia, can you paint a picture of the town of Vic Park and Albany Highway? What makes the corridor so unique?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously sunny nearly all year round. And I guess, with that, it has a lot of really popular dining and restaurants, cafes, strip in the town of Victoria Park, where we're only 10 minutes away from the Perth CBD. And we have great sporting precincts and entertainment precincts within the town of Victoria Park, with noticeably Optus Stadium, which is our big entertainment venue, which hosts up to 75,000 seats. And then we've also got the Crown, which is our casino that's in the state. But with that draws a lot of tourism, a lot of entertainment. And us on Albany Highway being one of the biggest dining corridors in the Southern Hemisphere really attracts that kind of activity where people coming in, dining with young families, all the way through to, specialized restaurants and the rest. And with that excitement and that demand, we then have a lot of parking, parking demands that really fluctuates throughout the days and as these events occur. So, yeah, it can be quite challenging at some stages.
So, what does it take to manage a busy corridor like that? What does a normal day for the parking manager look like?
Yeah, so great question. So we're quite a small team. We're a leadership team of about 5, and we've got about 16 officers that that rotate throughout the week that come in. And ultimately, what we're sort of seeing is we probably have sort of about over 2,000 transactions a day coming through that we're monitoring. We'll have over sort of 2,500 of customer requests come through around, um, violations that they're wanting us to come out and address, or concerns they might have. But also we're balancing that between our sort of community infrastructure, community services as well. So we've got 11 schools in the area. So again, during those peak times, we're out there helping, traffic move because, the roads can be quite narrow sometimes. So we're trying to help facilitate, really, a lifestyle benefit as well, that, it's easy to commute, it's easy to use, it's easy to access these kind of facilities. But ultimately, what we're really seeing is that we're really driving a lot of our parking payments through pay by phone at the moment. So About 72% of our total transactions are through either apps.
And I'm glad you mentioned that. That is why Trent is on our podcast. The town of Victoria Park has taken a really innovative approach to managing their pay by phone transactions. And I noticed a summary of their innovations on a news article, and I reached out to Trent, I don't know, maybe two or 3 months ago, maybe. And we started this conversation. So tell us about that. In summary, the town of Victoria Park took an unusual approach by allowing two pay by phone platforms that are integrated, and they're integrated in a way that the users can't play the system. So tell us about that.
Yeah, really, really great question. So it really stems back from when I first started and sort of really seeing these trends emerge around the world and really wanted to ask the question or challenge the industry in Australia around offering more payment choices. So traditionally we'd have cash or credit card transactions via parking meter. And it was common to just have one vendor in place for your pay by phone, and that was quite fine. But the town 3 years ago decided to remove cash completely. Our transactions were very low, under 5% total transactions. So the town was given the choice to remove cash completely. But with that decision, we also wanted to still continue offering choices for our consumers, which then really gave us the chance to decide, let's try to leverage the parking application side of things, because we also want consumers to have choices between experiences, so different experiences through different apps. And also there's user fees or convenient fees that are charged differently between apps as well. So again, for those more cost sensitive users, that have choices to choose between either a lower cost pay by phone application or something that they really enjoy the experience of.
So looking back on your journey of wanting to provide choices to your customer and really walking a new path, it's a very cool idea that if you're taking away how the customer will pay, like we're not going to do cash anymore, but instead you're giving them the choice of apps. What made that vendor integration so successful?
Yeah, great question. And I think like the clear answer to that was a real strong partnership. So we partnered with Easy Park and Olien through their pay by phone, through PayStay, their preferred pay by phone application. And it was a real coming together of partnerships and a real drive between all three parties to want to drive the town's vision, which was, improving customer experiences through accessing more applications and also providing, that choice. So we had that as our core focus. And through that partnership, we were able to really successfully move through those negotiations around how we will integrate, the rules around the integration as well, because as you flagged, we didn't want users bounce between several apps and the parking meter and all getting free parking on every time. So we've been able to integrate that effectively, that if you start a transaction on one application and try to bounce across to another, that it will start charging from minute one on that second device. So and what that's allowed is what built up more loyalty for their apps. We're seeing our pay by phone move from about 22% 3 years ago. Now we're up to 72% total transactions. So again, less reliant on the parking meter and the infrastructure on the floor. And the apps have really helped bring that vision to life as well.
Are you seeing that customers prefer one app over the other?
Yes, definitely. At this stage, we are. So the landscape in WA it's predominantly Easy Park in every single council in the area. So again, it's a real preferred choice for a lot of councils. But what we are seeing is the merging and the discussions around offering dual applications. We're now seeing other places like Brisbane just also launch dual applications as well. And there's a lot of other councils that are reaching out to us to understand how this integration is working, what's the feedback been like from the community. So I do see the tide changing as far as councils traditionally only offering one application and now transitioning to multiple, if not even three in the future.
This concept is so interesting, that you were able to get vendors to play in the sandbox together. So I love that idea. What are markers as a manager of the parking for Vic Park? What are the markers you look for that showed you that this has been a successful integration and a successful introduction to all the people that visit?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think really we're seeing that obviously the data's coming through, and we're really seeing that uptake of the applications. But ultimately as well, we're really seeing a lot of the feedback that we were getting around, meter breaks or jammed coin operations, and that time where we were dragged away from our core business to, repair or deal with like a 3G network failure in the town, was really quite costly to the town, and ultimately that then costs our ratepayers because of those inefficiencies. But now, given that we have an integrated system, and it's been great that we've had the support from Easy Park and Orican to continue advancing, our integrations. It really means that we're quite effective and quite efficient and very cost effective. So we've moved from a traditional a lot of parking meters on the street to we've reduced our fleet by about 50%. So again, ongoing costs is no longer there for the ratepayers to subsidize. That coin collection cost wasn't cheap either, that it become unviable, and that costing has been saved for the town and ultimately the ratepayers. And now we're using a really low cost model that is driving, as I say, 72% of those transactions. And that integration as well, just to flag, is really, it was really cost effective from the town's point of view. The only costings that we actually had was just re-establishing the signage throughout the town, and to really bring our partnership together, we actually split the cost 3 ways between Easy Park, Orican, and the town, to really symbolize that, this is a partnership and we're here to divide that cost amongst all in a fair and equitable way. And that was really at the cornerstone. We could have easily pushed it to the vendors, but for us, it was more important to demonstrate that partnership.
Okay, so all of this changed. Trent, thank you for having conversations with us. Thank you for being our newsletter spotlight a couple of months ago. But one of my big takeaways from our conversations in preparation for the newsletter was you mentioned that all of these changes for your customers and for the meters and the pay by phone and all of that has really been a blessing to your staff. You said that you have a pretty small staff, but this has produced great change that's been for the good. Would you take a minute and tell us about that?
Yes. Thank you. And really, really good reflection. So ultimately, when I first started in 2022 or 23, we really were seeing a higher staff turnover and a lot of dissatisfactions, a lot of frustrations with the systems, a lot of frustrations with the user experience, both for our staff. But what we've been able to see is we've brought our staff along for that journey. So we conducted a discovery piece when I first started around with a company called Telstra Purple, who came in and interviewed all of our staff around their experiences, the opportunities, and from there on, the buy-in from the staff was all supportive of moving to change and bringing everyone along for that journey. And ultimately, we could see the road in front of us was going to be very challenging. We knew we were going to change our parking meters. We knew we wanted to probably change our parking infringement systems, our e-permits, our pay-by application system. So we knew there was a long road of change ahead of us. And ultimately, we sat down as a group, all staff, the team leaders and our officers, and sort of said, this is going to be a lot of change. Are you ready for the change? Knowing that, frustrations are going to come, but, ultimately we're pushing towards a system where we feel confident in investing in the long term in. And they all turned around and said, yes, we're with you. They were motivated by, being a part of that journey. And ultimately, as we've rolled through the systems and the changes and the frustrations, they've seen the bigger picture because they've been a part of it. And what we're really seeing is that leadership isn't just at the top, it's from the officers, it's from them providing us feedback as well. And I think by sharing that experience with them has really improved their ownership of the systems. They're engaging with our customers about how to use the applications and the meters and get the best, experience they can. And our infringement management system is now end to end. So, we've got customers, that have great visibility of their information. They're empowered to, appeal or self-service. So again, by enabling these sort of features, which have all been suggested by our officers. That buy-in has really improved our retention of staff. Our culture has just gone in leaps and bounds. And also another a part of our business that we're surveying regularly is our psychosocial security within the team. So how confident do they feel in, voicing their ideas and thoughts? Do they feel that they're trusted within their roles? And all those results coming back really strong at the moment from the team, which means, they are feeling empowered. And so we believe that we've got the balance right, both between, staff interactions and obviously delivering for our customers and our community.
You mentioned two topics that keep kind of recurring as a theme throughout this conversation so far. One of them was that you've talked about discovery and how whenever you first got into parking, you did a lot of discovery. So what I hear from that is that you like to learn, and that's a great quality for a manager to have. Another thing I keep hearing you talk about is getting that buy-in, not only from the vendors, but also from your staff and your employees. So do you have any advice to managers out there in other municipalities or councils that can help them grow in those areas, or keep an open mind to that discovery concept and that buy-in concept?
Yeah, a really good reflection, and definitely curiosity was probably the real big driver for us in the earlier days. I just couldn't quite understand how we ended up in this situation, and I guess for us, we purchased that equipment back in 2014. Technology has changed, expectations have changed, both from staff and the community, and we just weren't moving fast enough with our technology. So ultimately, that curiosity factor really helped me and the team go and talk to other councils, speak to pretty much every vendor in Australia, and we brought that Telstra Purple on, and a consultant as well in Tricia Rogers come and sat with us to guide us through an expression of interest phase. So we went out to the whole market and said, tell us what products you've got and how it all glues together, and that early phase that we went through really established our requirements moving forwards. And I guess we knew we wanted SaaS based solution, we knew we wanted open integrations, we knew we wanted data to be shared bi-directionally, so we get the best out of both systems. And those principles stayed with us throughout the whole process. But I guess for me, and the feedback to any council or any organization looking to do this is, really establish your blueprint and your key features that are absolutely non-negotiable, and communicate that openly to vendors. So it was no surprise when we did ask vendors to, bi-directionally integrate their apps, that they weren't surprised. We've told them 3 times before, this is where we're going, this is where we're going, this is where we're going. And when it finally came around, they said, yes, we understand, Trent. You've told us many times, we understand. And if we want to play in this space in the town of Victoria Park, we know we need to do these things. So I think that was really helpful. The other one as well is, I cannot thank enough, the council, the board that we have in the town of Victoria Park. We went and presented all this information to them and gave them choices. We said, this is best of breed, this is how we would like to tackle it. But, ultimately, we do want to move away from cash parking meters, and we do want to move to pay by plate parking meters. And ultimately, we explained all the benefits, and obviously they gave me the 2 thumbs up saying, yes, go for it. But that early engagement with your key stakeholders in elected members, or well, we call them elected members, and my executive team, getting that early buy-in, getting that bigger picture communicated successfully was really important to us before we embarked on change, because, we knew we were going to get pushback from community at some stage around some of these changes, but ultimately, they were met with a really well polished, well presented, case where some of this technology just is no longer viable for us to be efficient. And ultimately, we're trying to drive value for our community, and we don't want to be wasting resources where they could be spent elsewhere.
So in the States, whenever we want to know what new technology is out, we'll go to like the NPA convention, or we'll go to a regional parking expo. Is that happening in Australia? Do you have access to that kind of think tank?
Look, unfortunately, we do not. There are some pockets around that. And so Park in Australia does a bit of a roadshow, which is really good. It's really good to network. We, for the first time in ever, the town of Victoria Park flew myself and two other colleagues across to Sydney to the conference, and that was a really good eye opener to network. But ultimately, it is left up to the individual council to go out and engage and run processes to really understand where that technology is, or hoping that someone comes along with all the answers at some stage. But I guess as I sort of pointed out, once you've got parking meter infrastructure and it's in the ground and it's been there for 10 years, sometimes that change may not be that practical, or you may be stuck with that system. So again, it's just about being curious, asking other councils. Something that we're really seeing emerge in Perth, in Western Australia, is an inner city parking management group. So myself at the town of Victoria Park and other councils, such as City of Perth, City of Vincent. So there's 5 inner city councils. We all meet up quarterly to compare notes and share our experiences within industry, share where we're planning to go with our infrastructure. And quite interestingly, tomorrow we actually got a presentation occurring around dual parking applications. So that's because we've been able to lead that charge, and now others are more interested in understanding about, well, how has that transpired, and what has been the results, and what's been the uptake. So now we can share that information with them. And as I say, through great newsletters and sharing our story through, great forums like this, really gives chance for people that are considering this change to reach out and have a discussion. And we're happy to share our information and our processes with anyone of interest.
Yeah, I learned that about you in our earlier conversations, that you really desire collaboration and you desire learning from other regions or councils, but also you seem really excited to share what is working and what is going so well at the town of Victoria Park. So to our listeners, I really want to encourage you, if this innovative strategy might work for where you are, don't hesitate to find Trent. I found him on LinkedIn. He's a great communicator. That will be a worthwhile conversation if you choose to reach out. So another area of change that's happening is residential and local permits. How's that going? What is working? Maybe what are some of the challenges there?
Yeah, really interesting topic, especially for the town of Victoria Park. I think I've had this discussion with our council 3 years in a row around, what's going to be the best balance, and it's something that is always a challenge. So for us, we're constantly trying to have that balance between our residents, our visitors, because a big dining corridor. So we have a lot of external people visiting the town of Victoria Park. And also our local businesses. So we're trying to always find that balance between all demands, I guess. And residential parking permits can play an important role. However, the town of Victoria Park has taken a stance that we tie our parking permits close to our building codes. And ultimately what that means is if there's sufficient parking on site for that property, they do not qualify for a parking permit, which ultimately means about 99% of residential properties are not eligible for a parking permit. So I think we have about 5 in the whole of town Victoria Park, because what we see is it's not a place for the town to be providing on-street parking for residents. We encourage active modes of transport, and if we were to also be promoting a lot of parking on street, then it could be detracting away from people willing to take up cycling, or accessing our great train network, or accessing bus services. So again, we want to see more active modes of transport being taken, and the town of Victoria Park has chosen to keep those eligibility criteria really closely tied to those building codes. However, with that, we do have a small pocket down near Burswood, which is now down towards the casino and Optus Stadium, which has a surge of visitations because of these major events. And we do have an event permit for those to receive a permit on those event days, which now allows them to park in that area. But ultimately, apart from that, it's very restricted. We probably have under 500 permits issued at any one period of time. So it's not a place that we're really willing to engage on yet. Again, it might change with with different councils or different makeups of the board. But ultimately right now, and it has been in the past, that, residential parking permits is not something the town is promoting. And yeah, ultimately, because of that encouragement towards active modes of transport instead.
And is your public transportation system able to keep up?
Yes. So we've got great, being along Albany Highway, I guess where we experience most of the congestion or the build up is around Albany Highway. There's buses going
Yeah.
down there every sort of 10 minutes or so. We also are connected by a train line that has just been upgraded by our state government of Western Australia. So again, there's a lot of investment going into these active transport stations and precincts. And they're really, safe, inclusive, clean, tidy, everything you'd want to see. So, they're great amenities. They're accessible for all. And, we are privileged and lucky to have such great resources surrounding the town of Victoria Park. We've got great cycle lanes throughout the town as well, and great networks. Ultimately, we're always looking to build upon, but they are existing. And we are considering, slowing traffic down as well around these precincts as well to make it more, better experiences for cyclists or people catching active modes of transport.
So, with all of these changes and the integration of the new pay by phone and both vendors, have you received the same type of feedback from people that live in the area as people that are visiting the area, or has there been a difference in the feedback you've received from the two kind of population groups?
Yeah, interesting. We have good confidence in our change processes because the data was saying that we had really low levels of cash payments. But we did get feedback in the earlier stages that, that they still wanted to tender coin and the rest, and we would give them, we'd give them their available options that they could still pay. We also do have a lot of free parking facilities still around the town of Victoria Park. So we've still got some great car parks that are free and accessible for all. And just off of Albany Highway, probably 20 meters down the road of Albany Highway, on those off streets, there is a lot of free parking or time restricted parking. So, we do have those facilities available. But ultimately, like, we were really surprised. We really didn't hear that much feedback. We probably heard from 5 or 10 sort of people out of 45,000 population that we have. So again, putting into perspective is, yes, we understood there was going to be change and some uncomfortable situations when they rocked up to pay for their parking, and they'd met with 2 pay by phone apps and only a system that can pay by card. So but ultimately that has been a real, small percentage of our total transactions. And what we're seeing now is, being a year down the track now, we're just seeing that everyone's just, organizing their transactions quite comfortably. The feedback isn't really coming through that strong. And, user experiences are still, improving. So we're not seeing too many changes. So in this story, probably no news is good news, and we'll just keep progressing.
All right, with all of these innovations, Trent, one of the things that has come out of our conversations is how when we let technology do computer things, it doesn't replace the human jobs, but it frees up the humans to do what humans do best. So kind of with that train of thought, what kinds of questions can your managers ask now that they just didn't have the margin to ask before?
Yeah, really, really great question, and something we're still in the early phases of. So, our data is all going to a centralized parking management hub, and that's providing us really great insights and reports around, our motorist behaviours, where we're seeing sticky points. And ultimately, we're really guided at the town of Victoria Park by our integrated transport strategy and our parking management plan, which really for the town, where ideally our peak area is we want to see occupancy between sort of 65% and 85%. So we're monitoring that so we can adjust our on-demand pricing structures. And through that, we're using LPR, license plate recognition technology throughout the town as well, through a company called Aero Ranger, and also using Orican's LPRX system as well to really track, compliance and occupancy throughout the whole town. Because for me, what we're now asking question is how compliant is our town? Are we finding that motorists are following our local laws, or do we need to do more education around those spaces? And what we're trying to now find is where are our blind spots? Where are those spots that need more attention? So we can spend our resources more effectively down in those zones or those areas with lower levels of compliance and having a more targeted approach. So something that really just baffled me in the earlier days is that parking officers would just walk the same routine, the same zones, doing the same kind of activity day in and day out. But ultimately, with this data really coming back into our centralized hub, we've got live information. We've got scans occurring across the town all the time. So we can now use that information to now operationalize our behaviors and our routines and how we want to tackle each day. So that's where we're starting to go towards there, the strategic discussions that we're having around, well, now how do we bring that data into life? And now how do we change our day-to-day operations to now meet those needs where we need to be present. So that's the exciting part for us.
That really reminds me of another interview we had several months ago now with Julie Dixon. And she said a lot of the things that you just said, that her platforms are compliance and education. And if we're not having compliance, it's because we need education. So I think that sounds really cool. It's fun to hear those themes repeated.
Yeah, absolutely. And we always want to take an education first approach where we can. We all make mistakes, we all, but ultimately we want to find out where those hotspots are occurring. And again, they're around, sort of our education precincts and where we might have a lot of short-term visitors. So, we want to spend more effort down in those areas. And we are seeing some benefits already about doing so.
Yeah, the operation of a parking kind of community can really impact the way the people feel as they're coming to visit, and they can impact decisions and choices that they make. We've been a part of rectifying some mishaps for communities that have implemented parking without having that communication first piece, or without having the education behind the changes that they're making. So it sounds like Vic Park really took those steps to make that happen, made it as seamless as possible on the user end, which can help the feel of the parking in the area, which gives an overall better experience to those that are visiting and parking and using the facilities. So how can you share an example of where a parking strategy noticeably improved the community life in Vic Park? Like, is there one specific thing that you did that you saw that changes what's going on here, or several things that kind of link together?
Yeah, and I think change takes time, and what we've seen is through good strategic directions, so through our integrated transport strategy, and now down to how we operationalize that through our parking management plan. What we've seen is that balance between, visitors, local businesses and residents to really balanced. And with that, we're now seeing a really thriving community, a really thriving activity precinct down Albany Highway. When driving down there on the weekend, there's tens of thousands of people, eating, dining with families and everything, bringing their grandparents in, being a real social hub. And I think, for us, that's why we make these changes through our parking management plans, because, ultimately we want it to be comfortable. We want it to be seamless. We don't want to be, discouraging people from the area. We want to be actually attracting people in, and through good management of occupancy, we're seeing spaces available. We're seeing that turnover occur. And through that, now hopefully businesses, thrive in this area because, that balance is correct and adjusts to those demands. So, we're very responsive in that space.
And with all the data that you've prioritized to collect, I'm sure it's wonderful to have data to be able to respond to. You're not just responding to a complaint or a piece of policy, you're responding to transaction data that is pointing you in the right direction. That sounds much less stressful.
Yes. And
Yeah.
like a prime example of that in the past has been, when we hear from residents that my street's always full, I never can park down my street. But we now have historical data that's collecting occupancy data, and we can literally pull up a report overnight and tell them, we've scanned past your street, 200 times in the last 12 months, and the average occupancy has been, 50%. Therefore, it doesn't meet our criteria for change or intervention, and it's just fine. And ultimately, because that's such an endorsed position from the entire town of Victoria Park, It really allows that clarity and comfort that we know when we're making change, it's for a reason, it's data led. Or on the other side is we're not going to react to the squeaky wheels or the areas that feel that there's a perceived problem when our data is saying otherwise.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Let's make decisions like that. Well, speaking of decisions, we are out of time, Trent. So all I want to know now is when I hop on a jet plane and come see this innovative parking strategy, where are we going to go to lunch on Albany Highway?
Really, really good question, Anna. It's probably too hard to pick one. So I'd probably say we do a walk down Albany Highway and sample a few, because we're a bit spoilt for choice. You have lunch somewhere, have dessert somewhere else, and have a drink in one of the many bars that we've got around, and then probably head off to one of these entertaining precincts, to go see some live sports, an AFL football game, or a big event, major event would be, the ideal day in the town of Victoria Park.
Well, that sounds like a destination vacation. Let's do it. Well, thank you for your time, Trent and Krista. I enjoyed this conversation very much.
Hey, thank you. And thank you for having me along.
Yeah, thanks for being here, Trent. And thank you all the listeners for joining us here on the Our Parking Industry podcast. We hope you were able to take a nugget today, or maybe a bundle full of knowledge and resources from Trent and Vic Park in Western Australia. And we hope that you'll join us next time on the Our Parking Industry podcast. To quote one of the greatest business minds of our time, Charles Munger, he said, "The best thing a human can do is help another human being know more." Here on Our Parking Industry podcast, we want to provide knowledge and resources. If you heard something that sparked your curiosity in today's episode, please reach out on our socials at TPN Consulting. You can find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Don't forget to subscribe and follow. See you next time on Our Parking Industry.